Okay, let's dive right into this explainer of the Pollock twins case. Grab a seat, because today we are looking at a story that completely blurs the lines of reality. We're going to unravel the chilling details of a mystery that has quite literally puzzled people for decades. And trust me, the facts we're about to examine are nothing short of haunting.
So, right off the bat, I want you to keep this question in the back of your mind. What if death isn't actually the end of the story? I know, it sounds straight out of the Twilight Zone, doesn't it? But seriously, keep that thought with you as we unpack the unbelievable sequence of events that unfolded in what was otherwise a perfectly normal, everyday town.
Chapter 1. The Hexham Tragedy.
Picture this, it's the early 1950s in the quiet town of Hexham, England. To really wrap our heads around how jarring this mystery is, we first kind of have to understand the incredibly idyllic, unassuming setting where it all began. It was a quiet place. Families lived simple, undisturbed lives, neighbors actually knew each other, and Sundays were reliably reserved for church and calm walks. And living right in the middle of this peaceful setting were John and Florence Pollock. They were a devoted couple raising their two daughters, 11-year-old Joanna and 6-year-old Jacqueline. Now, these girls shared an incredibly deep bond. They were practically inseparable, always seen holding hands, walking to church together every single Sunday morning without fail.
But then, May 5th, 1957 rolls around, and that picturesque imagery is just completely shattered. On this particular Sunday, while the two girls were making their usual walk to church, the unthinkable happened. They were struck and killed by a car. The driver was a woman who was reportedly suffering from severe mental distress. And just like that, in a single moment, the entire town is thrust into mourning, and the lives of John and Florence Pollock are forever altered.
Part 2. An Impossible Prediction. Now we move from the raw, heartbreaking tragedy of a family's loss into the first real anomaly of our mystery. Actually, even before the accident, John Pollock held this really strong belief in reincarnation, which, by the way, was a belief his wife Florence totally didn't buy into. But after losing his daughters, John starts insisting on something incredibly strange. He kept repeating this bizarre conviction: they'll come back to us. Florence, understandably, just dismissed this as the agonizing, irrational bargaining of pure grief. I mean, who wouldn't? But then, things started to shift.
Look at how crazy tight this timeline is. The tragic accident happens in May 1957, right? Well, by early 1958, Florence becomes pregnant. Doctors soon confirm she's carrying twins. And then, in October 1958, twin girls, Jillian and Jennifer, are born. That's just over a year after the horrific loss of Joanna and Jacqueline. At first glance, everything seemed like a normal, joyful new beginning for a grieving family.
Part 3. Echoes of the Past.
So, that illusion of a fresh start? Yeah, it vanished pretty fast, as these small, eerie details began to surface. Jennifer, the younger of the new twins, had birthmarks that perfectly mirrored the physical scars of her deceased older sister, Jacqueline. There was this one birthmark on Jennifer's forehead that exactly matched the size and shape of a scar Jacqueline got from a really bad fall years earlier. And then there was a second birthmark on Jennifer's hip, perfectly matching yet another one of Jacqueline's scars. And the absolutely crucial point here is this: no one had ever told these twins about their late sisters. They had literally no idea Joanna and Jacqueline had ever even existed.
And the mystery completely levels up when the girls grow into toddlers. One day, they stumble upon some old toys that their parents had kept hidden away, like totally out of sight. These were items that specifically belonged to Joanna and Jacqueline. Now, the twins didn't just pick them up and play with them like normal kids. They pointed to the toys and confidently stated, "These are ours." It wasn't simple curiosity, right? They weren't treating them as fun new discoveries. It was this chilling declaration of absolute ownership over items they had supposedly never laid eyes on.
It wasn't just the physical stuff either. They perfectly replicated the distinct personality dynamics of the deceased girls. Gillian became noticeably more mature, taking on the role of the older protective sister, which is exactly how Joanna was. Meanwhile, Jennifer behaved exactly like the younger sister, Jacqueline, super dependent and playful. They were flawlessly recreating a sibling dynamic that they had never witnessed or even been told about.
Then came the moment that absolutely shook John and Florence to their core. The family takes a trip to visit their old home in Hexham. Keep in mind, the twins had never been to this house in their current lives. Never. Yet, they recognized it instantly. Looking right at the building, they just casually said, "That's where we used to live." Just an impossible statement that totally defies all logic.
Part 4. The Fear Returns.
Okay, so recognizing old toys or houses is one thing, but the bizarre behaviors escalated way beyond that. The real climax of this mystery hit when the girls were about 4 years old. They were just playing outside one day when a car happened to drive past them. Nothing crazy, just a car. But suddenly, both girls absolutely froze in terror. Jennifer grabs her sister Gillian and screams, "The car is coming to get us!" This wasn't your standard childhood spook. It was visceral. It was a deep traumatic fear. It was exactly like a memory of their own deaths.
And the impossible memories didn't stop at a phobia of cars. The twins were able to describe details of a previous life with stunning, undeniable accuracy. They knew the exact layout of a school they had never attended. They recognized highly specific places around town, pointing out landmarks with total familiarity. They even just casually dropped the names of people they had never actually met. Everything they said matched perfectly. When you look at the sheer volume of specific data stacking up here, brushing the whole thing off as mere coincidence, that becomes a really, really tough sell.
But then, age 5 hits. And almost overnight, it's like a switch flips. The memories abruptly began to fade. By the time Gillian and Jennifer reached school age, all of these profound, chilling recollections were just gone. The tension entirely vanished. They became completely normal children with absolutely zero recollection of anything unusual from their early years.
Part 5. Skeptics versus Believers.
So what really happened here? Let's put on our investigator hats for a second and look at the analytical resolution of the case. When digging into this event, there are two deeply divided camps. On one side, you've got the skeptics. They argue that the parents might have unintentionally influenced the twins. They suggest that driven by just an immense amount of grief, the parents probably talked about the deceased girls, and over time, the supposed coincidences got heavily exaggerated. On the flip side, the believers argue that the evidence is just way too precise. The perfect mirroring of the birthmarks, the deeply detailed memories of specific people and places, the mirrored personalities. They argue that you simply can't chalk all that up to mere coincidence or subconscious parental influence.
Which leads us to the reality of the situation today. This remains an entirely unsolved mystery. To this day, no one can fully explain the Pollock twins' case. It stands as one of the most famous, baffling alleged reincarnation cases in the entire world. The evidence is heavily documented for sure, but the definitive truth, that's still out of reach.
So I've got to leave you with this final provocative thought. Was it a profound, blinding grief shaping reality, basically creating patterns where there were none? Or was it something far more mysterious? If memories truly can cross lives, then maybe, just maybe, death isn't the end of the story after all. I'll let that linger with you. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring the incredible mysteries out there.